Boyfriend demands I evict my disabled mom from our spare room, sparking a storm of tension and doubts about our future together. I'm an only child to a single mother. My parents divorced when I was really young and my mom was the person who raised me. I'm very aware of the sacrifices she made to ensure I succeeded in life, despite how poor we were. Maybe 5 years ago, my mom had a stroke and a series of TIAs. These changed her personality somewhat, and caused some mobility issues. She doesn't exactly qualify for disability, because she is still able to walk around and take care of herself. She could theoretically hold a job, etc. She has about a year and a half until she qualifies for Social Security. We're in the US. My mom started her own baking business in 2019, after working as a baker for 20 years. This obviously failed in 2020. She coasted for a bit before becoming a live-in caregiver for my gran until she died, and then the executor of my gran's estate. That brings us to now. She was living in my gran's house, which sold. She found herself with nowhere to stay and no income. I live with my BF, 35M, in a 2BR1 BA apartment. We have been dating for 5 years. I am very much the breadwinner. I estimate that I pay around 80% of household expenses. I make $50 per hour, he makes $21. I also WFH, so I generally take care of making dinner, doing dishes, shopping for groceries, etc. If my partner does any of these tasks, it is under my direction. We originally agreed my mom could come stay for a month while she found a job. She has struggled to find a job, she can't be on her feet, and has limited use of her dominant hand, and her last 25 years work experience is as a pastry chef. She's been applying every day, and she's had a few interviews, but no serious leads. We have had a lot of discussion about this, mostly that I am unable and unwilling to kick my elderly, disabled mother out with nowhere else to go. We have other family, but I am the only one with a spare bedroom. This has caused a ton of tension between BF and me. He has really started to be generally unpleasant to be around all the time. He's very moody, prone to outbursts. He gets angry if my mom stays in her room, says she's cowering and hiding when he gets home. He's even more angry if she and I are on the couch together when he gets home. I feel like I'm a stranger in you and your mom's house. If I go into my mom's room to talk for a little bit, he says I'm ignoring him. Along with this, he started to tell me almost daily that I don't do things with him enough. I don't kiss him enough, snuggle enough, talk to him enough, etc. etc. Anytime I am doing something fun, or for myself, he will start a big fight. It feels like living with a storm cloud, and I constantly feel like I'm dropping the ball in like 7 different arenas. This all came to a head this weekend because he was driving me to a photo shoot. I had been working on making this big, crazy costume, and a friend volunteered to take some pictures of me hearing the costume. I can't emphasize how meaningful this was to me, and decided this was the time to tell me that he would never tell me to kick my mom out, but he's really angry that I haven't done it already. And that I should be on team us more, that team someone else. I understand a relationship should be a priority, and my mom has been with us almost 5 months. I don't think that this is an easy situation, or one that he isn't allowed to have feelings about. But the fact that he seems to genuinely believe that I should kick my elderly, disabled mother out into the street really shocks me. It also makes me really question our future. Like, if this is how he is acting over a family member needing our spare room for a time, what would happen if we had a special needs child? Or if something happened to me? I'm a big believer that a good relationship is able to thrive even in times of crisis. How do I handle my boyfriend's big feelings without telling my mother to leave? I was married before, and my ex-husband's dad died pretty suddenly. I saw firsthand what the loss of a parent feels like. And the guilt that you might have been able to do more for them. Update 1. First, I kind of want to elaborate on my mom's behavior while living with us. This didn't originally feel relevant to this post because my mom really feels like a fixed point to me. Like she's going to behave how she behaves. That doesn't change that she's my mom, and I feel I have a responsibility towards her as long as she isn't violent or outright abusive. Also, I'm pretty desensitized to my mom's quirks. I've been dealing with her my whole life. It doesn't really occur to me to think critically of her behavior. My mom is really manipulative, and I am easy to manipulate. She is the type of person who will make small, seemingly innocuous comments that over time kind of create a new reality if you are around her frequently. So over the time she lived with us, she really made me feel that 65 is very, very old, and it's unreasonable to expect a 65-year-old to take care of herself. She also basically didn't take care of her personal hygiene. It was very hard to get her to shower. To the point where she would smell terribly. It was hard to be in a room with her. I would, of course, beg her to shower. And every time it was a very long, drawn-out, dramatic and emotionally intense scene. She would cry. Sob. She would tell me she'd promised to do it in the morning the following day. And then the next day she'd be throwing up sick. She'd beg me not to shame her for struggling, emphasizing that she's getting old, and as you get old it's hard to do things. She'd talk about being afraid of falling in the shower and no one helping her because I'm so ashamed of her. After she did shower, if I thanked her, she'd burst into tears and talk about how difficult it had been and how scared she had been of falling. This happened almost every time. I want to emphasize that at the time this was upsetting to me, not I kind of just accepted it. I also felt horribly guilty for causing her emotional distress, and going through this whole process like once a week was pretty overwhelming. Also, There had been a pretty big blow up where I realized that she hadn't been applying to any jobs. She wanted me to fix something with her phone, and it led to me seeing she had 0 applied jobs on Indeed, 0 confirmation we got your application emails. None of that. I asked her to furnish any proof that she'd been applying and she couldn't. She swore up and down, tearfully, that she had been applying, but she couldn't prove it at all. This made me really upset, but she still had nowhere to go, and she's still my mom. So I didn't really know what to do. I started making her show me every morning the jobs she had applied to. Afterward she did this voluntarily every morning. I had been told when she first had her series of TIAs that she needs to go on short, frequent walks, otherwise she will experience blood flow issues that cause things like numbness in her limbs. She barely moves at all. So much that her leg muscles are very atrophied. I have offered to go on walks with her, buy her a walker etc., but she always declines. It's worthy of note that I work from home. So I was around her constantly. She was the only person I talked to, other than BF, sometimes for weeks. And when BF came home, he was usually really short-tempered, so for me this created a reality where my mom was feeble, elderly, shouldn't be expected to care for herself. Trying her best. And BF was pissy, irritable, mean. Kind of ungrateful about everything I did for him, and for our relationship. My mom would comment frequently about how hard I work to have dinner ready when he gets home, and how he never appreciates it. How immature he seems compared to me. So for most of the day I would be dealing with my mom's emotional scenes, hearing a constant streams of subtle negative comments about BF, all so innocuous and focused on praising my efforts that I didn't realize how they were influencing me. All these realizations came later. Shortly after I made the original post, BF and I had a conversation that ended in us both calmly deciding it would be best for us to break up and move out. Luckily, our lease already ended and we were on month to month. So this wasn't an issue. It took a week for us to arrange new places to live. I got a 2BR for my mom and I. He found a studio. This happened at the beginning of this month. We both move into our new places at the end of this month. BF requested that mom go elsewhere for a while so we can pack without her being around. I wholeheartedly agreed. We've been together for a long time. This is difficult, going through a breakup, living together for a month, and also having your ex's mom be there constantly. Terrible. My cousin agreed to let my mom stay at her place. This is not a long-term arrangement. She's sharing a bed with my cousin's mom, who lives with her. My aunt has MS, it's a different situation. I can elaborate if desired. It's fine for a bit, but not forever. With my mom gone, everything changed. BF and I were getting along perfectly. BF's entire mood and vibe reverted back to how it was before. Fun, kind, hilarious, delightful. I felt like I was waking up. I had a few counseling sessions that helped me to realize that most 65-year-olds do take care of themselves. My mom does have some issues, but a lot of the issues are within her ability to fix. She hasn't been trying to sign up for government assistance. She hasn't been trying to do anything. She hasn't even been taking care of herself. At all. I realized through counseling and talking with friends and family that just because she's decided not to take care of herself doesn't mean I have to sacrifice my life to take care of her. I also had a lot of conversations with BF, ex-PF now, where we were able to really see how the other person was affected by all of this. He really now understands how this constant manipulation was causing me not to really see my mom the situation clearly. He also understands that despite everything, she is my mom. And for my part, I really understand why he was just at the end of his rope and was acting like a dick all the time. He was acting like a dick all the time. He openly agrees he was. But yeah. I get it. I really do. He wasn't the problem. We had some stuff to work on. And that was present before my mom moved in. But I think all that was fixable if we didn't have 6 months of me slowly being brainwashed, and him slowly becoming the worst version of himself. I do have a lease, which mom is on, for a year in the new place. I've decided that I will hold that lease for 1 year. After which I am moving into a 1BR, alone. If in a full year she has not found a way to support herself, at that point it won't be me making her homeless. I can't keep supporting someone who makes no effort to support themselves, seems perfectly happy to have my life fall apart, and contributes nothing at all to our shared home. I'm happy to help her however she asks Meadow during the next year. But I can't set myself on fire to keep her warm. Especially if she makes no effort. There are options out there for her. She's perfectly capable of looking into them. I need to give myself the love, care and consideration I've given her. I have to have a question what guidance can you give for someone living with a parent who has a proven track record of being manipulative? I don't disagree with you. I am really concerned about it. I signed the lease and everything before she went to live with my cousin. At this current moment, my mom really doesn't have anywhere else to go. She's staying with my cousin and my cousin's husband is kicking her out the day our lease starts. I feel that 1 year is ample time for her to get her shit together, so I won't have to feel like it's my fault if she winds up homeless. I don't think this is a good solution, but it's kind of the solution I have right now. 6 months of me slowly being brainwashed. I certainly hope that this isn't the case. I have already filed the intent to vacate from my new apartment at the end of the lease. I'm doing my best to set things up so I can stick to my boundary. I'm aware she's a whole-ass adult and needs to do stuff for herself. I also know she's choosing not to. I worked with a counselor to help set a boundary that mitigated my feelings of guilt. The boundary was this 1-year lease. A lot of it I didn't realize until she left. No, I did not purposely exclude it. I included all details I thought were relevant at the time. At the time I made the first post, I really wasn't seeing her as manipulative at all. I was just kind of seeing her as someone who was really depressed and struggling and needed help. I didn't realize the extent of the manipulation etc. until she left and I had a few counseling sessions. I agree now that it's important information and should have been included, which is why I made this update. The first post was indicative of my perception of the situation at the time. As this post is indicative of my perception of the situation at this time. My mother does have diagnosed clinical depression and anxiety. She also has Graves' disease and her thyroid was removed. Which kind of makes clinical depression symptoms a lot worse. Like it increases feelings of depression. She has been medicated for these in the past, but she lost her insurance when she turned 65 and hasn't been able to afford Medicare due to not having a job. I've been doing my best to get her on state programs, which was difficult because she was previously living in a different state than I am. And since she wasn't on the lease where my boyfriend and I were staying, she didn't technically have an address in this state and was unable to get state assistance. Now that she is on a lease, she does have an address and is in the process of getting on some state programs so she can get properly medicated. Update 2. First, I did stick to my boundary. When our 1-year lease ended 3 months ago, I moved into my own 1-bedroom apartment. It wasn't easy, but I had spent the entire year preparing both myself and my mom for this transition. During our year living together, I maintained firm boundaries. I required her to show me job applications daily, and I stopped engaging with the emotional manipulation around showering and basic self-care. Instead of begging, I simply stated, "Mom, I can't be around you when you haven't showered in a week. I'll be in my room until you've taken care of your hygiene." This approach was incredibly difficult at first. She would sob, claim I was abandoning her, and say I didn't understand how hard it was to be elderly. But consistency was key. About 4 months into our lease, something unexpected happened. My ex-boyfriend reached out. We started having coffee once a week, just to check in. Being away from my mom's influence and having my own therapy sessions had given me clarity about our relationship. He had also been seeing a therapist to work on his communication skills. Slowly, we rebuilt our friendship, and eventually, we started dating again, but with clear boundaries. He wouldn't come to my apartment while my mom was living with me, and we'd only see each other outside the home. Meanwhile, my mom finally got on Medicare and state assistance programs. Getting her proper medication for her depression, anxiety, and thyroid condition made a noticeable difference. She still struggled with manipulation tactics, but they became more obvious to me. The counseling had given me tools to recognize when she was trying to create her alternate reality. 6 months into our lease, she had a health scare, another TIA. It was terrifying, but it became a wake-up call for her. Her doctor was very direct about her need for regular exercise and better self-care. For once, she actually listened. She started using a walker and going for short daily walks. She even joined a senior center that offered free exercise classes twice a week. The most surprising development came about 8 months in. My mom met someone at the senior center, a 68-year-old retired accountant named Bill. They started spending time together, and he seemed to genuinely enjoy her company. He was patient with her health issues but didn't enable her manipulative behavior. When she'd try her dramatic routines with him, he'd just calmly say, "That's not going to work with me, Linda." And somehow, she respected that. When our lease was ending, I was prepared for a massive emotional battle. Instead, my mom announced that Bill had asked her to move in with him. I was shocked but cautiously optimistic. I helped her move her things to his condo, which is actually closer to medical facilities and has better accessibility features than our apartment did. I've been in my own place for 3 months now, and my relationship with my ex, now boyfriend again, has flourished. We're taking things slow, but there's a depth to our connection that wasn't there before. We both understand each other's boundaries better, and he's been incredibly supportive of my continued relationship with my mom, which is now much healthier with physical distance between us. My mom still has her moments. She'll call in tears about something Bill said or did, trying to get me to take her side. But I've learned to say, "That sounds difficult. What do you think you should do about that?" Instead of jumping in to fix everything. Sometimes she gets frustrated with my responses, but our relationship is slowly evolving. I still worry about her future. Bill is wonderful, but he's not her caretaker or her financial support. She's now officially on Social Security, which provides some income, but it's minimal. I've helped her apply for additional assistance programs, and she's actually following through with appointments now. The biggest change has been in me. I no longer feel responsible for my mother's happiness or well-being in the all-consuming way I once did. I love her, I help when I can, but I recognize that she's an adult making her own choices. Sometimes I still feel guilty, especially when she has health struggles, but then I remind myself that I gave her a full year of support while she got on her feet. My boyfriend and I are talking about moving in together again next year, but we've agreed to extensive conversations about boundaries and expectations first. We both learned the hard way what happens when communication breaks down. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and life continues to evolve in ways I never expected. Some good, some challenging, but I'm handling it all much better than I would have 2 years ago. First, the situation with my mom and Bill has had some significant developments. 3 months ago, Bill had a minor heart attack. He recovered well, but it prompted them to have serious conversations about their future. To my complete surprise, they decided to get married in a small civil ceremony. Mom called me, giddy like a teenager, to tell me the news. I was genuinely happy for her but also concerned about the practical aspects. When I asked about their discussions regarding finances and healthcare, Mom shocked me again by pulling out a folder with everything organized. Bill, being a retired accountant, had insisted they work through all the practical matters before making this decision. They had consulted with an elder law attorney about protecting their respective assets and discussed what would happen if either needed long-term care. Mom actually listened to professional advice for once. The wedding was small but lovely. Mom wore a pale blue dress and looked happier than I've seen her in decades. Bill's adult children were wary at first. They had concerns similar to mine about their father taking on a partner with health issues, but they've been warming up to her. His daughter even invited Mom to join their weekly book club. On the relationship front, my boyfriend and I have continued to strengthen our connection. We've had those extensive conversations about boundaries and expectations we promised ourselves. After much consideration, we decided to move in together last month. This time, we drafted a detailed relationship agreement covering everything from finances to alone time to how we'll handle potential visits from my mother. It might sound unromantic to some, but for us, it's been incredibly reassuring. The most challenging development came when Mom had another TIA 2 months ago. It was more severe than previous ones, and she spent 3 days in the hospital. Bill was wonderful throughout, but it was a stark reminder of Mom's fragile health. Her doctors adjusted her medications and emphasized the importance of consistent exercise and stress reduction. After she was discharged, I visited them weekly to help with meal prep and organization. This time, I was careful to maintain my boundaries. I'd arrive at 10 a.m. and leave by 3 p.m., regardless of any last-minute emergencies Mom tried to create. Bill quietly thanked me for this approach, saying it helped him maintain structure as well. The most surprising change has been in my mom's behavior. Living with Bill has given her something I never could, a peer relationship rather than a caretaker dynamic. When she starts her manipulative patterns, he simply doesn't engage. After decades of me alternating between enabling and resenting her behavior, she's finally with someone who neither indulges nor condemns her for it. She's actually learning new coping mechanisms at 66. That's not to say everything's perfect. Last month, she called me sobbing at midnight claiming Bill was being cruel to her. When I calmly asked for specifics, it turned out he had refused to drive to the store at 11 p.m. to get the exact brand of ice cream she wanted. In the past, I would have either rushed over with ice cream or berated her for being unreasonable. Instead, I simply said, "That sounds disappointing, but not an emergency. I'm going back to sleep now. We can talk tomorrow if you'd like." She hung up on me, but called the next day to apologize, something that rarely happened before. My own therapy has continued, focusing now on building a life that isn't defined by my caretaker role. I've joined a hiking group that meets twice monthly and started taking a ceramics class. My boyfriend has been incredibly supportive, encouraging me to develop these interests outside our relationship. We've had Bill and Mom over for dinner several times, and these visits have gone surprisingly well. My boyfriend and Bill have bonded over their shared interest in woodworking, and Mom seems genuinely pleased to see me in a healthy relationship. The question of future care still looms. Mom's health is unpredictable, and while Bill is currently able to provide companionship and some assistance, he's made it clear he can't be her full-time caretaker if her condition significantly worsens. We've started researching assisted living facilities with good reputations, and I've been gently introducing the topic during our conversations. Mom's Medicare and supplemental insurance have been lifesavers, covering most of her medical expenses. She and Bill have worked out a financial arrangement that protects both of their assets while allowing them to share household expenses. This level of practical planning is completely new for my mother, and I credit Bill's influence entirely. I still have moments of guilt and worry. When Mom calls with health concerns, my heart races and old patterns try to resurface. But I'm getting better at responding thoughtfully rather than reactively. I remind myself that I can love her without sacrificing my well-being. As I look toward the future, I feel cautiously optimistic. My relationship is solid, my boundaries are holding, and my mother is more stable than she's been in years. I know challenges lie ahead, especially regarding her health, but I'm no longer facing them from a place of desperation and enmeshment. I guess my question now is, how do we continue planning for Mom's future care needs without undermining the independence and dignity she's currently enjoying with Bill? Update 4. The biggest news is that Mom and Bill have moved to a continuing care retirement community. This wasn't prompted by a crisis, which is what makes it so remarkable. After Mom's last TIA, Bill started researching options that would allow them to maintain independence while having care available if needed. They visited several communities and found one they both loved. It is independent living apartments, activities, transportation services, and the option to transition to assisted living or nursing care if necessary. What shocked me most was that this was entirely their decision. Mom actually initiated the conversation. After decades of refusing to acknowledge her limitations or plan for the future, she sat me down during a visit and said, "I don't want to be a burden on you if things get worse. I nearly fell out of my chair. When I asked what prompted this change, she admitted that seeing Bill's children's relief when they made this decision made her realize how much stress her uncertainty had placed on me over the years. Their new apartment is lovely, a one-bedroom with a small patio where Mom has started container gardening. The community has daily activities, and Mom has joined a water aerobics class that's gentle enough for her limitations. Her doctors have noted improvement in her mobility and overall health since she started regular exercise. She's also made friends with several women in the community, something she hadn't done in years. Bill continues to be a stabilizing presence. When Mom starts catastrophizing about her health, he gently redirects her without dismissing her concerns. I've learned so much just watching their interactions. They have their disagreements, but they resolve them without the emotional manipulation that characterized my relationship with her for so long. As for me and my boyfriend, we're thriving in our shared apartment. The relationship agreement we created has been invaluable, especially when navigating visits with Mom. We've established a routine of having them over for dinner once a month, and we visit their community once a month as well. These boundaries have allowed us to maintain a connection without becoming enmeshed again. The most profound change has been in my emotional response to Mom's needs. Last month, she called to tell me she'd fallen, nothing serious, just a bruised hip. 2 years ago, this would have sent me into a panic spiral, canceling plans and rushing to her side. Instead, I was able to calmly ask what the doctor said, what support she needed, and if Bill was able to help. I offered to bring over some groceries the next day, but didn't feel that crushing responsibility to drop everything immediately. And remarkably, Mom was okay with that response. My boyfriend proposed last week. We were hiking one of our favorite trails, reached the summit, and he got down on one knee with a simple, beautiful ring. As I said yes, I realized I wasn't carrying the weight of uncertainty about my mother's future that had shadowed my previous relationship. We're planning a small wedding next spring, and Mom is genuinely excited without trying to make it about her needs. The financial aspects have worked out better than I expected. Mom and Bill's combined resources allow them to afford their retirement community, and they've both updated their legal documents to protect each other while maintaining separate assets for their respective children's inheritances. Mom's Medicare and supplemental insurance continue to cover most of her medical expenses, and the retirement community offers transportation to medical appointments, which has been a huge relief. There have been challenges, of course. Mom still has health scares that trigger my anxiety. 2 months ago, she was hospitalized briefly for pneumonia, and I found myself slipping into old patterns of excessive worry. But my therapist helped me recognize this and step back into a supportive daughter role rather than a primary caretaker. Mom and Bill have also had their adjustments to community living. Mom initially complained about all the old people, the irony apparently lost on her, but has since found her social group. Bill sometimes feels the apartment is too small after having his own house for decades, but appreciates the freedom from maintenance and yard work. The most unexpected development has been Mom's newfound interest in technology. The retirement community offers computer classes, and she's learned to use video chat to stay connected with me between visits. She's even joined a Facebook group for people with her specific health conditions, finding support and information that doesn't solely come from me. As I look toward my wedding and potentially starting a family in the next few years, I feel a sense of freedom I never thought possible. I love my mother deeply, but our relationship is now healthier and more appropriate. I can be her daughter without being her caretaker, her therapist, or her emotional support system. I still worry about the future. What will happen if Bill's health declines significantly before hers, or if her condition worsens beyond what their current living situation can accommodate? But these concerns no longer dominate my thoughts or dictate my decisions. We have plans in place, professional support, and most importantly, clear boundaries that allow us all to live our lives with dignity. If there's anything I've learned through this journey, it's that change is possible even in relationships that seem hopelessly entrenched in dysfunction. It took time, consistency, professional help, and yes, some luck, in the form of Bill, but we've created a new pattern that serves us all better.